I zipped up my suitcase and looked around the bedroom melancholy. The sleigh we bought to replace the old bed now seemed like a mockery. She could keep everything. I actually left her in a good position. The house was paid off. She wanted him more than I did, so let him stay with her. Our children's education fund was almost complete. Joey blew his chance at the University of Detroit and paid his own way through community college. Yesterday, we received notification that he can return to university. I'll release the funds from his education trust so he can get back on track. He seemed to have learned his lesson, and even better, it scared my daughter to stay the course. She finished her first semester with a 3.7 GPA. Carol and I debated whether to cut Joe off from funding, but I stood my ground. Part of growing up is realizing that you have to pay for your actions. I smiled sadly, thinking about how Carol would learn this lesson too. I took out my phone and printed out a photo I took this evening of Carol slow dancing with some guy. I left a photo, my wedding ring, and my lawyer's business card on the table where she would find them. I put on my jacket and left the house for the last time. I had been driving for about 2 hours when my phone rang. I knew I'd have to talk to her eventually, but now wasn't the time. So I put my phone on vibrate. I took a new position in South Carolina. My boss was surprised when I accepted the offer, and even more surprised when I asked to go there early. I was going to take a day to look for a place to live and a couple of days to get to know people. The previous plant manager left everything in a terrible state, so I arrived as a savior. I was expecting a lot of long days at the start, but that was more than acceptable for me since I wasn't going to be sociable anytime soon anyway. I was 46 years old and still in good shape. It's a pity that I still loved my wife. Hopefully, this will go away with distance and time. For now, I had enough work to keep me busy. Time will show. I stopped at a gas station to get gas and use the restroom. I was going to stay at a hotel on my next exit and finish the trip tomorrow. I had just taken a sip of my Diet Pepsi when the phone rang again. It looked like she wasn't going to give up. Well, now was as good a time as any, I guess. I swiped the screen and answered. "Hello, this is Joseph," I said. "Joe, what the hell is going on? Where did you get this photo? Why is your wedding ring on the table? And most importantly, where the hell are you?" I heard in response. "Hello, Carol. I took the photo this evening at the Red Horse. My ring is on the table because it doesn't mean anything to me anymore, and I'm about 10 hours from Charleston, South Carolina," I replied. "Wait, what? Doesn't mean anything? South Carolina? Joe, what the hell's going on?" She hesitated. I sighed. "Carol, I found out that for the last 2 weeks you haven't gone to Sherry's like you told me, but instead went drinking at the Red Horse. Because of our past, I followed you last week and saw you slow dancing with that guy in the photo. When the boss said there was a promotion in South Carolina, I immediately agreed. I contacted the lawyers and prepared a proposal for division, which, in my opinion, was more than generous. I thought maybe I had misinterpreted what I was seeing, so I followed you again tonight and saw you slow dancing with the same guy. I probably should have talked to you about this last week, but honestly, your lies about where you were didn't make me inclined to believe anything you might say," I told her. "Joe, this was Mike Lanorm from sales, and he's married," she said quickly. "The same as Devin," I answered quietly. There was silence on the other end of the line. I realized I was holding my breath, so I let it out and took another sip of my drink. I could hear her breathing heavily. "You haven't mentioned that name in over 5 years." "I thought we were over it," she said carefully. "I thought so too. But your cunning, which I saw with another guy at the bar, brought it all to the forefront again. I can't go through this again, Carol. Your relationship with Devin almost broke me. I can't go through this again. The kids are okay now. The house is paid off. Your salary means I can leave if I just leave you the house. Our credit cards are minimal, but I'll pay them off. I have a new job and they are providing me with a furnished apartment for the first year. There's no need to complicate things. Come to my lawyer and pick up the documents. If you don't pick them up this week, I'll make you get them. Show them to your lawyer and you will see that this is a good offer. If you just sign, we can finish this in 6 months and move on with our lives." "A clean break is best," I said in a tired voice. "Joe, there was nothing between me and Mike. Sherry was there and you know she wouldn't let anything bad happen." I know it looks bad and I'm kicking myself for lying to you. Come back and we can talk about this. I'll explain everything, she said hastily. Carol, it doesn't matter. Your dancing could have been the only way to cure his cancer and I would still have moved on. You think you know how much pain and suffering I've been through because of you and Devin, but you still have no idea. It's a lie, Carol. Nothing good could happen if you felt like you had to lie to me. I would have thought that you would want to end this marriage. Then you can drink and dance and not worry about a jealous husband at home. I know I may not have made it easy for you to go out and do whatever you want, and now you can do it, I said with a hint of bitterness. Joe, this isn't fair. All I ever wanted was to be with you. Even when I was going through my stupidity with Devin, I never wanted to leave you. I was emotionally confused and he took advantage of it. You know this. We went through so many months of counseling to overcome this. She began to cry. Do I know this, Carol? I know what you told me. I know what the consultant told me. I know what the doctor told me. I also know how I felt when I found out you were dancing with another guy at the bar. I know how I felt when you lied to me again about where you were. Now let's talk about justice, okay? How fair was it for me to go through the pain of losing a child alone? I didn't have any outside woman who understood me and was ready to hug and comfort me. How fair was it that I had to rely on my hand for comfort for over a year while you had sex with some snacky salesman? You know, I finished. Just sign the damn papers and let's end this farce of marriage, I told her in a cold voice. I didn't want to hear her cry, so I pressed the button to end the call. I tried to return to the emotionless mood I was in before the conversation. I drove another 35 miles and turned to the exit when I saw a sign for hotels. By the time I fell asleep, I was fine, almost. The next day was a long drive. My phone started vibrating at 7:30 a.m. and continued to do so every hour for half an hour. When I stopped for a quick meal, I noticed that one of the calls was from my daughter. I sighed and called her. Dad, what's going on? Mom said you left her, was the greeting I received. Yes, honey, I left because she lied to me for the last 2 weeks, and I just can't deal with it, I replied. Dad, she said all she did was talk and dance with the guy who lost the baby. All she did was try to help. She says you got it all wrong and took the job in South Carolina without talking to her. Something else happened, Dad, so spill it, she said in her determined voice. Darling, you are already an adult, so I will tell you some details of where I am. When baby Casey died, your mom and I fell into serious depression. You may remember that Mom was completely disconnected for a long time. Someone needed to stay involved enough in the family to keep things running, so I took on that role. I learned that about 4 months after Casey's death, your mother began having an affair with a co-worker that lasted about 5 months. I was suffering alone, and she was getting help and sex from someone else. I stopped to pull myself together. I didn't know. Why did you stay with her? My daughter asked in a soft voice. Because I really loved her, but mainly because the price was too high at that time. Divorcing her would mean I would become a broke dad who only sees the kids on weekends. You children would have to deal with the breakdown of your marriage, along with the death of your brother. I would have to pay child support, spousal support, medical bills, and still wouldn't be able to live in the house. She was on bed, rest for 6 months before Casey was born, and did not return to full-time work, so her income was essentially zero. So I decided it was best to focus on family and do whatever it took to make our marriage work again. Focus on family and do everything we can to get our marriage back. Be with. She said her defense and did all the right things. Plus, I really love her. The thing is, I can't go back there again. Seeing her dancing with another guy was too painful. Even though they didn't kiss or anything, she lied to me and it all came back. I'm sorry, honey. I really hope this would work, but I just can't do it. I know this probably doesn't make any sense to anyone but me. But last night, the pain was as bad as it has been for 7 years. Back, I answered. Damn, Dad, I had no idea. I know we were all very upset about Casey. I can't believe she did this to you. What a bitch, she said with some anger. This is my girl. She always supported her father. Of course, she had me wrapped around her little finger, so it worked out. Britt, honey, I didn't tell you this to impress your mom. I only told you this so you would understand that I didn't just leave her for one dance. You're old enough to know that. She is your mother and she loves you. What she did to me. So I kindly ask you to stay away from it. Focus on your education and know that you have two parents who love you to death. I promise everything will be civil, and we won't drag you or Joe Jr. into this, I said. Yes, Dad, that won't happen, she replied with a hint of a smile in her voice. I need to take a minute and think about all this. I'll call you later today and I want you to pick up the damn phone. I know how much you like to switch off when you're stressed, but don't you dare do it. It's for me or Joe, or we'll find you and set up camp on your doorstep. I love you, Daddy, and hang in there, she said, hanging up. I was just leaving Ohio when I saw my son's number pop up. I realized again that sooner or later I would have to talk to him, so I answered the call. She's a wreck of a father, was the greeting I received. Joe Jr. and I had a good, if sometimes strained, relationship. I loved him to death, but we both dig when we feel we're right. This led to an interesting battle of wills as he navigated his teenage years. Usually, Carol would step in and calm us both down when we both decided to stand our ground. She could make him come to his senses, whereas if I had said the same words in the same tone as her, it would probably have ended in a fight. Don't get me wrong, I loved my boy and would go through fire for him. I think we were too similar. I'm really sorry to hear that, son, I replied. She didn't do anything this time, Dad. If you forgave her, then why are you running away now? He asked. I was a little shocked. How did he know about Carol's affair? Did she tell you about this? I didn't think you guys knew. I answered, a few years ago I overheard a phone call where she was talking to this crap. I wanted to tell him they were done, and she was going to tell you that Friday, he replied. I had no idea what she was talking about, but I figured it was bad when you guys sent us to our grandparents for the weekend. That Sunday evening was the darkest day I had ever seen in the house. It was even worse than when you returned from the hospital without Casey. After a while, it dawned on me what she had done, he replied. Huh? I had no idea, I said. So what's the matter, Dad? Why are you running? I told her she was an idiot for lying to you, but she did nothing. Can't you at least go back and talk to her? You keep telling me to pull myself together and face my problems. Now it looks like you're being a jerk. Joe, maybe I'm being a jerk, and you can judge me all you want. When you are in my shoes, you can choose your own course of action. In the meantime, I'll tell you what I told your sister. Get out of my personal life. I can't tell you how proud I am of you for making the commitment to come back to U of D. I'm going to hang up now before either of us says anything we'll regret, me pressing the end call button. To be young and have all the answers. He really raised an important question that I tried not to think about. Why was I so upset and adamant now, 7 years after the affair ended? I hadn't even thought about Carol's affair for a couple of years before she started lying to me. I would like to answer this question. The only thing I could think about was that I had never truly forgiven her. But it didn't make sense because I've been really happy for the last few years. I really thought I had this figured out by now. Oh, well, maybe I can see a counselor once I'm more comfortable with my new digs. I wasn't sure how much help the old therapist had given me if I was reacting so badly now. I began to think about what I would need to do in the new plant to make it work. I was able to immerse myself in thoughts about work and ignore the incessant buzzing of my phone as I crossed the border into South Carolina. 8 months later, today was that day. I signed for the letter and just looked at the huge envelope. Now I was a free man. Carol struggled with this for a month and then suddenly gave in and signed the papers. I was surprised at how quickly she gave in. We had a phone call and she explained that she was helping him cope with the death of their newborn, and dancing was just part of the environment they were in. She said she felt awkward when he asked her to dance, and she did it just to avoid making a fuss. The second week when he asked it, she had one dance, and that was it. She didn't think he was hitting on her, but it made her so angry that she said she would stop going out. When I asked why she didn't just tell me, or better yet, include me in it, since I had been through the same thing, she almost broke down and said that she knew this would all lead to her affair and she didn't want to do this to me. She thought she would talk to him and help him see a psychologist, but since there were other people there, she didn't think it was that big of a deal. I just couldn't get past the lying part. I got calls from Sherry, her other friend Abby, and Mike himself, who told me that nothing happened except awkward dancing. I told myself I was stupid for holding on to this, but I just couldn't bring myself to feel the same way about my wife. I loved her, but I didn't want to marry her anymore. My new therapist suggested that I had never truly forgiven her and that these feelings had settled in my subconscious until they came to the fore again. Now it was simply impossible for me to let it go. It made as much sense as anything, I think. After looking at the envelope, I decided that there was no need to open it yet. I walked up the 2 flights of stairs to my apartment, checking other mail. I looked up when I heard screams coming from the hallway. I saw a well-built black guy pinning my neighbor Letitia against the wall and screaming in her face. "You don't break up with me, bitch. We were done when I said we were done. Now get your ass over to this apartment and put your ass in something hot. We're late for my company." Ugh. He stopped. When my fist hit his kidney. I know it probably wasn't very sporting of me to hit a guy in the back, but I figured all the rules were broken when he put his hands on a woman. I wanted to hit him again, but suddenly he stood up on his tiptoes as my neighbor grabbed him between his legs and started squeezing him. "Listen to me, you stupid bastard," she hissed at him. "If you ever touch me again, will I fucking cut off your dignity?" He was choking, and there were tears in his eyes. He began to nod and cry out as she must have squeezed them one last time. She let him go. He fell to the floor and trudged down the corridor. Letitia watched him go, then slid down the wall and began to cry. I sat down next to her and gently placed my hand on her shoulder. "I'm making spaghetti and there's always too much of it. Come in and help me eat some, okay?" I asked. She nodded and I helped her up and into my apartment. The company put me up in a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment located within walking distance of the factory. They were paying a year's rent, and I was seriously considering staying there after they were done. I didn't have a pool, although we could use a pool in a neighboring complex. We had a very good training center. That's where I first met my neighbor, Letitia. I stayed here for 2 months and didn't do much except work 14-16 hours and then sleep. My doctor told me that I was going to have a heart attack and that I should cut down on work and start eating healthy and exercising, standard doctor stuff. I decided to limit myself to a 12-hour workday and went to the gym. At the time, my mind was racing with thoughts about work, divorce, and everything else, and I discovered that hard training would allow me to forget. It probably wouldn't be any different than if I climbed into a bottle, but at least this way I got to find abs rather than a beer belly. Letitia came over while I was cooling down, and we chatted for a few minutes. Her sweatpants showed off a very nice round butt with some cleavage in the thighs and strong muscular legs. She was wearing a sports bra which smoothed out her breasts quite nicely, but seeing her in street clothes I realized she had nice perky breasts. Her curly hair was always pulled back into a ponytail, and she wore no makeup, but her face was charming, with plump cheeks and a dazzling smile. Her outfit always showed off her mocha skin to make her look sexy, but not enough to make her look slutty. She spent the last 2 years attending medical school under a small fund that paid her expenses. Right now, standing in the hallway of our house, she looked like a little girl who needed help. I poured her a glass of wine and brought the water to a boil. I opened the beer, walked over, and sat next to her on the couch. She came over and cuddled up to me while drinking wine. My father beat my mother. He pinned her to the wall just like Tyrone did to me and slapped her repeatedly. She said in a monotone voice. I hated Dad for it, but I was too scared to stop him. Mom was crying, and he was slapping her, and I couldn't even scream for him to stop. I was so afraid. When Ty pushed me against that wall, I was a scared little 9-year-old again. It wasn't until I saw you behind him and realized you had hit him that I could think straight. Thank you, she said, looking at me with the most beautiful brown eyes. I was glad to do it. Thanks for having lunch with me. You'll be the first person I've had lunch with outside of work. I answered. She smiled and kissed me tenderly on the lips. We ate, talked, and had a great time. I even received another tender kiss when she left at midnight. 2 months later, we had sex. It all started innocently enough. I was a little depressed about turning 47 alone, so she dragged me to a bar with her friends. She must have told them that I was feeling depressed because I had 4 to 20 women flirting and touching me all night. It was great. Letitia had a couple of drinks and kept trying to persuade me to show her friends my abs. I trained hard and was proud to have the body of a man 15 years younger. So it didn't take me too much to drink, to lift my shirt and stretch. The answer made my year. Rhonda, the cute little Latina who worked with Letitia, stuck her hand down my shirt and asked seductively, "If I please the birthday boy, will you let me take your spanking?" I was surprised. I stood there stuttering while they laughed at me. I had just realized it was a joke when Letitia spoke. "Sorry, girls, the white boy is getting some dark meat tonight. After I'm done with it, you can eat the leftovers," she said. I jumped when she touched me and looked at me with her eyes closed. Then she had a predatory smile. This caused a lot of hue and cry about what these young ladies would do with a mature stud like me. Their words are not mine. For the rest of the night, Letitia was by my side, touching me whenever and wherever she could. All in all, it was a great night that only got better. When we got home, Letitia didn't even bother to act like she was going to her house. She stood near my door and waited for me to open it. As soon as I opened the door, she came in and walked over to my refrigerator. She didn't say a word but leaned over, took 2 waters, and closed the door. "Do you have condoms?" she asked. Letitia, you're drunk and I'm not sure that's a good idea," I answered. She bent down and pulled her shirt off, revealing a lacy black bra that struggled to contain her stunning breasts. "First of all, I only drank water for the last 3 bars, so I'm high, but not drunk. Secondly, it's not me falling in love with you or you falling in love with me. These are 2 people who need to get laid. So sit down and relax," she said, as she began to unbutton her jeans, letting them fall to the floor. The underwear matched the bra. Why the hell not? I let her lay me down on the couch and take my pants off. Then we had sex. The morning light came through the window and revealed a beautiful, dark-skinned woman drooling on my pillow. I clasped my hands behind my head and thought about the situation for a while. Last night I was horny and excited by the fact that some young women were flirting with me. Letitia was a wonderful girl, but she had absolutely no future. I brought my children into adulthood in their lives and had no desire to do it again. And I wasn't in love with her. She was my first friend since I moved here. I only want the best for her and will do anything to help her. But the whole boyfriend-girlfriend experience was not in the plan at all. So what about last night? 2 adults are having fun letting off steam. I hoped, like hell, she was on the same page as me. I looked at her again and her open eyes were looking at me. "You're thinking about last night," she said. "Yes, I really hope we haven't ruined our friendship," I replied. "Joe, you're a great guy, and I love you to death. But we both know we could never get back together. I want kids, a house, a career, and the whole 9 yards. I need to go through the clinic, and then I will move to where I can find a good job. Nothing you've ever said has made me think you want another round of kids, cars, and house payments," she said with a grin. "Yeah, been there, done that, got the t-shirt," I said, smiling back at her. "So that leaves us with last night. I had a great time. I would love to have a great time again in the future. But if it's too weird for you, it might be a one-time thing. If you ask me, I would do it. I love making friends with benefits. There is no exclusivity. We remain friends, and when the mood and the right time are right, we sleep with each other stupidly." "What do you think?" she asked. I never had any of these friends with beneficial relationships. I didn't know what to think, except that we seemed to be on the same page. Heck, I was a 47-year-old man who had been in a monogamous relationship for the last 25 years. I felt like I was being offered the keys to the kingdom. I decided to act like I was 27 instead of 47. "I think it will be very difficult for you to suck my dick from that side of the bed," I replied. She looked at me for a second, and I thought I had ruined everything. Then she laughed and attacked me. I called work and took a personal day. Being the boss had its advantages. After the next shower, Letitia made it clear that we were not monogamous. Joe, I'll be busy with school and I'll probably end up dating other guys. I expect to see more than a few women walk through your door in disgrace, okay? You're too good a guy to waste your life. Mope at home. Live life. Go naked rock climbing or have a threesome. Just do something. You have a rocking body, thick hair, and a sexy, husky voice. Be selfish and treat yourself. So I did. As if. I sat down and made a list of things I've wanted to do over the years, but haven't done because of family. The first step was to buy a motorcycle. I went to a dealership and was told that I should take a safety coursey. It was one weekend for $85. I had to take a written test and a skills test, and then they gave me a card that I could take to the DMV and get approved. I also get an insurance benefit. I returned with my shiny new license and went to the back room of the local Harley store. I was a little confused by the cost of the new Harley and also by the fact that I would be put on a waiting list. Unfortunately, I didn't see anything that really spoke to me. I was about to leave when the salesman pulled me aside. One of the women who rides with us just got her old man's bike as part of a divorce agreement. The bike is cherry color and practically new. This looks like what you are looking for. I'll give you her number if you promise to buy all your accessories through us, he told me. I agreed. I called this number, and a couple of hours later, I was heading to the northern part of the city. I don't know what I expected, but it certainly wasn't this. Homes here would cost between $3 million and $4 million. I drive a 3-year-old F-150 that I keep clean, and I would say that I am well out of my price range. It was a gated community, and the security guard on duty directed me to the address. I pulled up and saw a beautiful Harley sitting in the driveway. The garage was open, and I saw what looked like a replica motorcycle parked next to a new Lexus. The very air here smelled of money. The woman who came out to meet me was simply impressive. She was well-built and had the right combination of hair, clothes, perfume, and posture. I was stunned. She approached me with a confident look and extended her hand. "Hi, you must be Joe. I'm Connie, and this is my ex-husband's bike," she said, shaking my hand. This woman was extraordinary. She exuded professionalism and determination while still being warm and inviting. I was fascinated not only by her appearance, but also by her manner. Politeness and many years of experience in meeting rooms took their toll. "Very nice to meet you, Connie. Thanks for letting me come look at the bike on such short notice," I replied. "Taylor at the store said you looked like a real customer, not just a curious one," she replied. She started telling me about the features of the motorcycle, the engine, the fairing, and so on. I just looked at her and tried to work up the courage to ask her out. I have already decided that I will buy a motorcycle. When she finished her speech, I continued to look at her. She blushed, and I winced, snapped out of my reverie. "I will bring you a certified receipt for the motorcycle tomorrow, but on one condition. You must agree to go to dinner with me tonight or tomorrow. Otherwise, the deal will fall through," I said with a smile. She looked at me with a piercing gaze. Then she smiled slightly. "There's a new Italian place on Shore Drive that I'd like to try. Meet me there at 7 p.m., was her response. I agreed and shook her hand. She was just like that. Strong, but at the same time feminine. She looked like $1 million when she walked into the restaurant. I had looked online in advance about what wine to order for dinner, so I felt pretty confident. I thought about buying flowers, but it seemed too intimate. I had to pull myself together and just go with the flow. The food was good and the company even better. Her divorce had been finalized 6 months ago, and she was going through all the self-deprecation about what she could have done differently. "We met in law school and we're together for 20 years, she said. And suddenly he starts going to the gym, buying expensive toys, getting hair implants, and having sex with his secretary. Seriously, how many more cliches can you cram into a divorce?" She took a sip of wine and continued. "They say there's nothing worse than a woman who's been betrayed, but let me tell you, a woman who's been betrayed and is an award-winning divorce lawyer is even worse." I did my best to take as many of his toys as I could. In the end, he still had his Aston Martin, his bimbo, and his license to practice law. It was even funnier to me when his bimbo got pregnant. Since he was infertile, The child definitely couldn't be his. Bimbo was kicked out onto the street and he crawled back. I told him to leave and put his motorcycle up for sale to make him even more angry. I could see that she was still angry with him, although I admired her attitude. She seemed to understand that after losing trust, there was nothing left to do. I watched as she calmed down a little and she smiled at me with her beautiful smile. "What's your story? From your accent, I'd say you grew up in the Midwest, but the license plates on your truck say you're a South Carolina guy now. You don't have a wedding ring, and there's no mark or dent where it should be. Ring, I'm guessing. You're single, or divorced, or widowed. From the first look at your truck, I can tell you have a decent but not great salary. However, you can pay cash for a Harley, so I think you're one of those guys for whom a car is just a means of transportation." "How did I guess?" she asked. I smiled. "Pretty sure. I'm a plant manager at Allied Steel, so my job is pretty good. I've been divorced for a little over a year, moved here from Michigan to run the plant and at the same time to take my mind off my family and my ex-wife. I have 2 kids. Both are in college. They keep in touch with me to make sure the school checks don't bounce. I love them both, and I'm sorry I can't keep in touch better, but it's a two-way process. Otherwise, there's probably nothing more to say," I answered. It was a little awkward to discuss all this on the first date, but I thought, well, why not? Everything I said was true. She looked at me warily. "What do you miss most about marriage?" she asked. I had to think for a second. "Having someone to come home to and share the day with. I really enjoyed looking forward to time spent with my family," I replied. She burst out laughing. "I'll have to work on my flirting skills," she said. "You should have said that you miss regular sex. Then I would say that there is no reason to miss him if you find the right person. Then you would ask where. If I could find one like this, I would answer that it's right here." I blushed. "Then I miss regular sex," I laughed. "There's no reason to miss him if you find the right woman," she replied with a sparkle in her eyes. "Where can I find one like this?" I asked, following her mood. She leaned across the table and pushed her breasts with her hands. "Right here," she said in a low whisper. I stopped at a gas station on the way there and bought a pack of condoms. After receiving a message that the door was open and I could enter, I opened the door and saw her skirt on the floor. Then I saw a pair of tights by the stairs. I followed the abandoned clothes to what must have been her bedroom door. It was closed, but her panties were hanging on the doorknob. I opened the door and saw her on a huge bed. I took off my clothes. I didn't say a word. I was under the impression that she wanted it fast and rough, so that's what I did. For the first time since high school, I ignored all the foreplay and just had sex with her. Now that I could get a good look at her, she was a beautiful woman. For some reason, I thought her breasts were fake, but I couldn't really tell, and I didn't care. She stretched like a cat and almost purred. I went to the bathroom. Looking in the mirror, I wondered what I had gotten myself into. What's the protocol here? Should I just leave? Should I go back to bed with her? Talk? I had no idea what to do. I returned to the room and found her snoring on the bed. I went to cover her with the sheet, and she hugged me in her sleep. Well, I like hugging as much as the next guy. I crawled under the blanket and snuggled up to her. After a couple of minutes, I fell asleep myself. I woke up with a wonderful feeling of pleasure. As soon as she saw that I woke up, we had sex. After putting the condom away, I looked at the clock by the bed and saw that it was almost midnight. I crawled back under the covers and snuggled up to her. "Thank you for this," she said, looking into my eyes. I couldn't help but laugh. "Literally any time you want to do this again, let me know," I said with a smile. She smiled. "I'm serious, thank you. I've been going through a long dry spell with the divorce and all the inevitable nonsense that comes with newfound freedom. Plus, I'm getting ready to move. I just needed some good sex and a nice cuddle. Do I sound too harsh?" she asked. "Not at all. I completely understand. I'm just not sure about the protocols for things like this. I like you. I liked what we did. I'd like to see you more, but if you don't want to, I understand. How soon are you moving out?" I asked. "I have to be in Boston in 4 weeks, that's why I wanted to sell the Harley. But I'll have a lot going on, so I won't have much time to spend together," she said. I read between the lines. She got what she wanted, and has no interest in repeating it. My feelings were hurt, but not too badly. I had an evening of good food and good sex. How could that be bad? I smiled. Got it, I'll order an Uber tomorrow to pick up the bike. I hope your move goes smoothly, I said, taking out my clothes. Oh God, I should have learned to speak better, but I think sex has messed with my brain. I'm not saying I don't want to see each other again. I'm saying I can't start any relationship because I'll be leaving in a month, she said, hitting his head on the pillow. I turned her over and started kissing her neck, then went lower. Then we'll have fun whenever we can these next couple of weeks and just enjoy each other, I told her. She gave me a smile and a thumbs up, then fell asleep while I finished getting dressed. I covered her with a blanket and kissed her on the head before leaving the house. I came home and Letitia must have been following me. It's been a couple of weeks and I have a big test tomorrow. Can you help me out a little tonight? She asked. Sure. What are you studying? I asked, opening the door. Silly boy, let's call it anatomy, she said with a smile, lifting her t-shirt over her head. Crap. What should I do? Tish, can you help me with something first? I asked. It was already late. She had already unzipped my pants and lowered my panties. Her face was so close that she must have sensed what I was doing. She stepped back and looked at me with a blank look. I'm sure I screwed up. Then she laughed. You little lecher. You've already been busy tonight. Tell me all the details, she said. It won't work, honey. Just know that this was a recently divorced woman who needed some relief. I think I was used as a human dildo tonight, but I don't mind, I replied. Letitia looked at me with appetite. Did you use protection? She asked. Yeah, I replied. Do you think you can do it one more time? She asked. I laughed. God knows I'll try, I said. Let me take a shower first, and we'll see. No, she exclaimed. I want you now. Okay. I'm 47 years old and completely out of my element. I sighed and thought quickly. I used a condom with Connie, who I was sure was clean. Letitia seemed to be in the mood for kinks. I decided to go for it. It led to the best sex I've had in my 47 years. The fact that I had already had sex twice that night led to a prolonged act. Afterwards, we quickly showered and dried each other off. We went back to bed, and she snuggled up to me. I took a minute to think about how strange my life had become before falling asleep. The next morning, I went to pick up the bike, and Connie was a little nervous. Okay, Joe, I don't usually do casual sex, but I'm just over the moon right now, she told me. I smiled at her. Casual sex isn't my style either, but if it's as good as last night, I might have to reconsider, I replied. Have you ever thought about moving to Boston? She asked me. I laughed and kissed her. No, I'm tired of the cold. I've spent enough winters in Michigan to know that I like the sun, I replied. She blushed. That made me sound weird, didn't it? She laughed. A little, I laughed with her. But seriously, we'll meet a few more times before you leave. Then you'll need to move to Boston, pick up some 20-year-old guy and teach him what you like. But don't fall in love with him too much, because I expect that when you come back here on business or on vacation, you will do it only with me. I'm so horny right now, she told me with endearing displeasure. We were standing in her garage, so I walked over and pressed the button to close the garage door. She looked at me with a questioning look, and then her eyes widened as she realized what I was about to do. We had sex. She turned and kissed me. It was one of the most erotic experiences of my life. Damn, why didn't we meet 6 months ago? She asked. 6 months ago, I wouldn't have known what to do, I told her. 6 months ago, I was still going through my divorce. So we'll chalk it up to bad timing and have fun while we can, I told her. Yes, she replied. I noticed and appreciated the condom, but I'm clean and on the pill. Safe sex wouldn't bother me. This is one of those things where I don't know the etiquette again, I replied. Her eyes narrowed. You'll be darkened, sex with someone else is not it. My God, if you have a girlfriend, I will find her and tell her what kind of guy you are. She was angry. I stared at her. Fuck off. I don't have a girlfriend, but I do have a sex friend. She's a nice girl, and neither of us wants a full-on relationship. But if you think I'm the type of guy who would cheat, maybe we should break up right now. I told her in a cold voice. She stared back at me. Move on with your life, I said, starting the motorcycle. The women were crazy. Letitia laughed at my predicament. Listen, Joe, you're going to have to learn to navigate these situations. I can't tell you what to do. Every woman is unique. My friends and I are totally fine with friendships with benefits, but there will be women for whom it doesn't work. Maybe it's a question of generations. You are our unicorn. I raised an eyebrow at the unicorn remark. I'm speaking in general terms, but right now in our lives, we want someone who will treat us well, take care of us, satisfy our sexual needs, but not be clingy. Rhonda could call you and tell you that wants to blow off some steam. I'm sure you would go with her, make sure she was safe and have a good time, and then come back and have sex with her until the morning. She wouldn't have to worry about making you jealous or confront you on Facebook. If she didn't want to do something, she'd know you respected her wishes. You wouldn't brag. You'd treat her the same way you always did, right? Well, yes, but Rhonda is a great girl, and this must be the best time of her life to experience it. I can tell you, on the other hand, the house and the white picket fence are worth the price, I replied. She looked at me with bewilderment. Are you saying you regret something? She asked. I thought for a minute before answering. Yes and no. I love my kids, and I loved my family life, but looking at how it all turned out, I wonder if it was worth it. The bottom line of my hard work and living for my wife and kids is that I'm a 47-year-old divorced father who hasn't spoken to his kids in 6 months. I thought Carol and I would work a few more years after the kids left, and then buy a small house and go on a trip. Then she arranged an affair with him, asshole. After that, it was all about keeping the family together for the sake of the kids. I thought I had it covered, but now we know I didn't. From the age of 20 until a year ago, I knew what was going on and where I was going. Now I'm just kind of wandering. I mean, I had sex with a hot 20-year-old and a 40-year-old woman in one night. This only happens in letters to Penthouse, I replied. So wander around for a while, Joe, she said. You're 47, not 97. There's nothing wrong with exploring your life. I already told you to go out and do something. That still stands. It won't be me for the next 6 weeks because I have clinical classes up north, but get out of your head and enjoy life a little. Tell you what, say yes every time you can for the next month and see what happens. You need to find what you're looking for. Plus, I'll probably have a lot of pent-up energy when I get back, so if you don't mind, keep this weekend free and I'll make it a memorable one for you. I couldn't help but smile back. I kissed her on the lips and grabbed her ass as she left to pack her things. She truly was my best friend now. Even if we didn't have sex, she would be my main advisor. I took a moment to analyze my feelings for her. I loved her, without a doubt. But I wasn't in love with her. I knew she would find a wonderful guy, and when she did, I would be truly happy for her. For now, I have decided that she will be my Yoda, and I will follow her advice. 2 weeks later, my phone rang. The number seemed familiar to me, so I answered. Hi, Joe. Is this Connie? The woman you bought the motorcycle from? I heard. I could have gone 2 ways, but I saw no reason not to be nice. Hi, Connie. How are you? I said in a cheerful tone. I heard her take a deep breath. A lot to look forward to. Joe, I'm so sorry for the way I acted the last time we met. It took me about 20 minutes to calm down before I realized that you hadn't done anything wrong and were trying to be polite. It seems like I'm done with more cheese for divorce, she said quickly. Believe me, I understand. I haven't had to flirt or expose myself in over 2 decades. Times have changed, I replied with a laugh. Yes, they have changed, she replied. I'm still moving to Boston, but I have an awards show and going-away party next Saturday that I definitely need to be at. My ex will be there, and I'd love to show up with a handsome man on my arm. Accommodation and drinks will be provided by the company, Bill. You just need to come and accompany me for a few hours. We can spend the weekend together, or you can leave right after the ceremony. Will you be my date? With pleasure, Connie. Just one thing, I replied. I checked if my door was closed. What? She asked. If I spend the weekend with a sexy woman in a luxury hotel room, Be prepared for me to do unimaginable things to your beautiful body for many hours. Does that suit your plans? I asked, wondering if she would cancel the invitation. There was a long pause, and I began to worry. I was ready to retreat when she spoke again in a low, husky voice. Don't say that right before a meeting. I'm about to meet with a client and I'm already horny. I'll stop by a few stores and you'll have a weekend to remember, Buster. I have to go, but I'll send you the details. She said before hanging up. We had sex like rabbits. She must have spent $1,000 on lingerie and toys. When we found out that her ex was staying at the same hotel, she put on a bikini that was hardly acceptable, and we headed to the pool. She pointed at him, but I would have noticed him anyway. He was a guy with a small belly and a beginning bald spot who was angry with us all the time. His tribal tattoo looked funny on his pale, undeveloped shoulders. A few 20-somethings gathered at the pool bar, and I got a few looks from the girls as I swam for piña coladas. Suddenly, I felt two soft breasts pressing against me from behind, and one hand slid into my shorts while the other reached for my drink. I turned and kissed Connie passionately, pulling her hand out of my shorts. Let's finish these, and then go back to the room, I said, not trying to speak more quietly. The girls in the group began to banter and shout as Connie quickly downed her drink, trying to hide her blushing face, but her efforts were in vain due to the momentary frosty dizziness. As I walked past her ex, I reached into her tiny bikini and squeezed. We haven't looked back. The award ceremony was boring, but my date looked great. We spent the rest of the night dancing, and then I took an hour to love her body. We had another goodbye session in the morning, and I left to get ready for work. After I cleaned the apartment, I sat down with a glass of whiskey and thought about things. My feelings for Connie were exactly where they should be. Friends with benefits. The same was true for Letitia. Although I thought they were joking when they called me their bottle challenge, Letitia's all-female cast was just for fun. I was surprised how okay I was with it. It never occurred to me to think about a long-term relationship. What really bothered me was that I didn't know how to be myself. The bike was a good start, and I discovered that I loved riding and the feel of the open road underneath me. I decided that I would try skydiving at least once. I decided to grow a beard. Carol hated facial hair, but now I only had myself to worry about. I was thinking about getting a tattoo. A few years ago, I saw a cool compass and anchor design. At the time, I just shrugged it off. But now, why not? Another decision I made while drinking my whiskey was that I was going to start hiking and camping again. I liked it as a teenager, and Carol didn't mind it when we first got married, but it was never her thing. I laughed at myself, thinking that this is exactly what a midlife crisis is, but so what? For the first time in a long time, I felt excited about something. I had subscribed to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.